Oh, wrong screen. Try that again. Share screen. Window. I want to share that one. Cool. We won't bother with an icebreaker. Well, we can do. We'll do because it's recorded. We'll do the name, pronoun, where from, etc. Just so that anyone watching can see who we are. I've got a question: whether mapping or accessibility information is highest priority for you, and then the plan for today is literally the standard housekeeping stuff, which I need to go through. And then we're calling it Kanban Coffee, and it's essentially looking at a whole pile of different topics and spending 20-30 minutes on them. And it was really interesting on the one on Tuesday. We got into a number of different topics around station entrances, around naming conventions, and everyone was giving me ideas. I was grabbing the data and looking at the data in real time. So we were doing a lot of real time kind of playing around, which was really fun to do. So we could try some of that today. And then that's pretty much it. That's the whole plan for today. So, hi, I'm Dr. J. Use they as a pronoun, service designer, business analyst. I'm here as the service designer / service owner for Naptan, working for DFT, and mapping or accessibility. I'm going to be guided by everybody. I know what the department wants. I know what we're able to get. I'm just interested in hearing what the different people want. So Leon, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yes, hi, Leon Byford. I'm a product manager in Transport for London's digital team, primarily looking after Journey Planner. Pronouns are, no particular preference, so please take your pick. And yeah, thanks for organising this.
If you've got no particular preference, you may find me wandering into the neo-pronoun realm just to show off my pronouncing. No, I don't do that. I get stuck with my accent when I say what's the one that there's one that when I say Z, it sounds very much like I'm saying she because of my accent, and it gets me in all kinds of trouble. I'm just like, no, I said it with an X. Trust me, I said it with an X inside my head at least. Yeah, plan for today, housekeeping. We've got a YouTube channel. For those who are watching this lovely recording, like, subscribe, sign up for notifications, all the stuff you're supposed to say when you run a channel. We've got Eventbrite and we've got a newsletter. We use that to send out a monthly update on how things are going. So you'll see how things are going, but we also use it to send out any messages if there's any outages coming up or any outages that we know of. For example, we had some weird stuff happening over the weekend. The team all got like messages every half hour because they didn't but we don't believe it impacted on anybody, but there would have been a minor impact for somebody if they tried to do something specific during this time. The next meetings we've got coming up are in November. And we're not going to do anything in December because it would have been the last week of December and there ain't nobody in the office last week of December. And the next ones will be a wrap up of the year in Naptan, and we're going to go through. I might ask some of the delivery team to come along and talk about some of the things that we've put in, and we'll go through all of the stability work that we've done, adding the new bulk removal process, which has been the really big feature that we've added this year. Which is this managed removal, this archiving service. So, Leon, eventually I will be able to remove some of the dead stops for you from your system. This will hopefully then convince you that you should go and put in taxi stands, because according to Naptan, there are no cab racks, taxi stands or similar within London. And that is quite... And it's kind of one of those things of when you start to get into the details and start to map out places like King's Cross, St Pancras, the two taxi stands there are actually quite integral to an accessible ongoing journey in some ways, and the fact that they're not mapped in Naptan is kind of one of those things that we want to kind of have a look at. But this is so. this is part of the plan for managed removal. Is everyone is coming on board one by one by one. TfL and Transport for Greater Manchester. I think your numbers 5 and 6 on our list of how we bring people on. And one of the things, once we've done the managed removal and we've taken all of your dead stops out, we're then in a position to start to work with you on improving the data within your data set, having a look at specifically for your data, what are the things that could be tweaked, what are the things that are missing. For example, and I know it's a ridiculous example, but the funicular, the cable car, the Excel over by the Excel Centre.
London Cable Car.
That's the one. Still doesn't exist in NAPTAN for all insert many reasons here. Or if it exists in NAPTAN, it's not coded up as a cable car. There's a number of things like public lifts, which are lifts within the street furniture that should be put into NAPTAN because they will allow people to build a journey, because they're often the only step-free way to get from one place to another. And I can think of a couple around Bank, which aren't part of the Bank station. They're external to the station, but they allow you to move around that kind of multi-layered street architecture around Bank and Monument. So there's some really quite interesting pieces that we can start to look at, and we can start to get in and really dive in and get into the guts once we've got you on through managed removal onboarding, which is kind of the gateway drug into the whole brave new world of really going through NAPTAN. And this is part of the street versus schema. We want to find a way to represent the street better, because the street is where it's at. The schema should help us represent the street, and we want to look at what are the things that we would need to do to change. And it's also, we don't want to do a big schema change at the moment. That's a 5 to 10 year piece of reworking the schema completely. But what can we do within the schema? Can we recode some stops so it's a little bit clearer to downstream providers what they are? Can we add 1 or 2 values into some of the stop types and use that to make things a little bit clearer to downstream users as well as to what type of stop they're going to see there? Precise and accuracy is all about getting the stop in the right place. Everyone has to put in eastings, northings. We use the Ordnance Survey tool to convert that to latitude, longitude. If your tool is not using the Ordnance Survey conversion, none of them are, we need to go and work with your tool provider, your software provider, to look at how we get that conversion in and how we get it as close as possible. One of the things that I'm proposing for a mapping solution for NAPTAN is something that allows us to show the stop in eastings, northings, and its lat long, so you can see the difference between the two, because often they're several meters out, and it's okay in London if they're 5 meters. If they're a couple of meters out, people can generally see them, but it becomes much harder when they snap to the wrong streets around intersections and things like that, because it's just ended up 5 meters away, and another software is seeing that as being on another street. So it's just kind of really digging in, and I'm sure you've got examples of those, of stops that wander occasionally and start just wandering down the street. We know what a coach is. So I'm glad I've got you here, Leon, because London, for some reason, Google is mapping a lot of London bus stops as being available for coaches as well. So the actual coach stops are really hard to find. So I live in Elephant and Castle, right by the top end of New Kent Road, and hi, come find me. I just love the way that I've announced that, and people could literally figure out where I am. But there is potentially a coach stop there, but it's an unmarked coach stop, and there's a coach stop down in New Cross Gate, which can also be used, but they're just marked as bus stops. They're not marked as coach stops. So it's kind of like there's a confusion. Everything is a coach stop according to Google, which means nothing is a coach stop because you can't actually find the right coach stops you're after. So it's kind of like, well, how do we fix that? Do we tweak one or two of the values? Do we put a new code in, which is not a big change to the schema, to change one of the codings or to separate out a couple of the codings to make them a little bit clearer. On roadmap, people wanted lat long. Everyone wants it. Adding it in where it's missing is what people want to do. We're still looking at how we should do this, and also how we do this with the most accuracy. So we're working with Ordnance Survey. When it gets to NAPTAN codes and ATCO codes, London is in its own little realm of doing its own thing. You don't actually meet the schema in a couple of places now. So once we've done the managed removal, we'll sit down and have a really good chat about, I know that you don't want to change any of the NAPTAN codes that currently exist, but how do we make sure that going forward they stay within the schema designs and there's not any overlap across the nation? Because that's where it can get a bit tricky, where people get slightly out of the lanes that were set up. You can end up having an NAPTAN code that is very like another place, miles, or in another complete other local authority, and it's just making sure we've not got those overlaps possible and we're completely out the way. And data retention, we're deploying a way of reducing the amount of data that we store and being very clear about what we store, and we'll publish a little page on that. Lastly, just running through, what does NAPTAN facilitate? So everyone is on the same page. This is Beryl. Beryl lives in Bristol. Beryl wants to see her friend Beverly. Beverly lives in Birmingham. And the journey NAPTAN facilitates is the public transport journey from Bristol to Birmingham using a travel planner, using some kind of, and Leon's like, yes, exactly what I do. But interestingly, NAPTAN is part of a whole world of data that comes in to building those travel planners. So the local authorities have the proposal, planning, and the provision of a bus stop. They then take the data for that and put it into NAPTAN for that local authority. That is then combined into a national data set. The bus operators outside of London, because I know we do things quite differently in London, the bus operators download those NAPTAN data sets and use that to build their routes, to do the planning and the staffing that they need. The planning of how many buses they need, the staffing of those buses is all done using the NAPTAN data set to figure out where those buses need to go and where they can stop. That information goes into both TNDS and BODS. TNDS is usually uploaded by the local authority. BODS is usually uploaded by the bus operator, but that's not a hard and fast rule. NAPTAN is then used by the on-the-bus systems to know where buses are, and this drives the next stop, the ticketing, and the fare zones. Although I know London does its next stop differently, because of course you do, and your ticketing and your fare zones are completely different to the rest of the country. I don't know how you do your disruption feeds, and this is going to be an interesting question to ask. And then finally, the real-time bus information around schedules, incidents, and where is the bus. That's all fed into the real-time information screens for most places, and also that can be consumed by BODS to look at adherence to timetables and things like that. And all of that information comes together into the consumer apps, which is your bus company, your local authority, your passenger, Google, Apple, Travelline, and probably more. This is not an exhaustive list, as well as the printed timetables or the electronically printed timetables if you're in London. And then Beryl catches the right bus in the right place at the right time for the right fare, and NAPTAN's kind of the glue underneath for all of this to happen. Finally, before we run on to the Kanban Coffee, a bus stop is where the bus stops. We did right at the very start of me coming onto NAPTAN, we asked that question, what defines a bus stop? And we spent many hours actually doing a whole pile of definitions and working it through, and essentially, because of the way you've got hail and ride in your custom stops and things like that, and your flexible areas, a bus stop is where the bus stops, which sounds so reductive, but is just so beautiful. And then a fixed stop, so a stop with a marked stop with street architecture, or a fixed stop, because it can also be a custom stop, which is fixed in place but doesn't have any architecture, is measured as a 1 by 1 meter square, centered on where the passenger needs to stand rather than where the flag is. And this is important because it means that ones where you've got a tail stop or a stop across the road from the furniture and things like that, it's really clear where the passenger actually needs to stand to get on the bus. And this is represented as Eastings Northings, translated to lat long using the Ordnance Survey, and every bus stop is represented in the data set in the world with a number of codes, which is the indicator, usually on top of the bus stop, and then an ATCO code, which is usually the longer code, but sometimes not, and the NAPTAN code, and every QR system uses either the ATCO code or the NAPTAN code to represent the bus stop. How was that for ripping through the standard stuff I have to go through? And Leon's about to go, all of this is wrong because London does things ever so differently.
Yeah, there are differences, but broadly speaking, it all makes sense to me. So.
Oh, excellent.
It's all good.
So, the idea of Kanban Coffee is we look at the ideas, we vote on them, and then we talk around the highest voted one for about 20 minutes, and then move on to the next one. Now, in the last session, there were 3 people, and we had 3 votes. I'm going to show you the ideas from last time. Just bear with me. I'm trying to do this and pour my coffee, which is ridiculous. Why don't I just do one thing at a time? So I shall.
You probably should have made some coffee for the Kanban Coffee, but
yeah, yeah, I should have warned people. This rule. So these were the things that people brought up. So we had entrances to stations, because that's dreadfully inconsistent, and recognizing stations, rail stations, and for London metro or underground stations and trams is really, really difficult. And maybe that's something we could dive into if you've got no problems with that. Talking about stop areas, talking about the national stops, who is responsibility, which is again something that we might want to talk about in terms of the metros. Language around stop names, so Battersea Power Station, which is, and St James's is how many S's does St James's Park have, and how many things. Next stop messages, which I don't think is a big one for you because you do it in a slightly different way, and the use of alternative descriptors. So, Leon, your choice. Which is the first thing that we should discuss, do you feel is the highest priority thing on your list?
So really for us, the top priority would be those national stops. There are some really pressing ones. So
yes.
If you don't mind, it would be good to...
No. So just to set the context as far as I understand it, and also to add in the additional context. So in the whatever time, in the before time, and it was late 90s, early 2000s, when NAPTAN was described and defined and put into a SQL data set, there was an issue identified that only the way that it was built, there was a technical limitation, which meant that there was a number of stops that were called national stops or centrally managed stops. And this was rail, ferries, rail, airports, coach stops, which have since deprecated. I forgot to mention that. Get rid of your coach stop numbers because we don't need them anymore. So was it ferries, rail, metro, airports, coaches, and these metro things. Now, the metro things doesn't make sense, and I can't understand why they were ever put in, but that's an entirely historically, or why they were put in the way that they were. And because of the way that the system was, there was a technical limitation that meant that only one set of people could upload those ATCO codes. which meant that for some reason somebody at DFT has to do all the work to put in the stops for TfL when TfL builds a new underground station. Words are failing me as to why this exists. It's just a historical thing that exists. So one of the things that the things that are occurring at the moment is I'm the only person who can do the changes, and my workload is overwhelming. I'm doing 4 jobs on the team and trying to do this, and making these changes takes time and focus, a lot of time and focus, because we don't have the software to do it either. I'm having to go in and edit the XML file. So that means that I go in and do it. I get somebody to work with me to make sure that I'm doing it right. We then get it double checked before we upload it. So we do, even just making a small change actually takes quite a number of steps. And I have a backlog of them, so I'm trying to get through to them. So yes, that's where they are. I honestly believe that the national rail stops should maybe potentially still be centrally controlled, like the stations that would be under Great British Rail or National Rail. Airports, I am ferry terminals, and anyway. But tram and metro definitely should be devolved, because London has them and manages them. Edinburgh has them and manages them. Transport for West Midlands has them and manages them. Manchester has them and manages them. Why are they still needing to be a central piece? So also devolving a lot of that, I think, is going to remove a lot of the problems. That's where I think we're at. Does that make sense, Leon, as to why it's a bit of a I can't get these changes done? Because because one of the reasons for the last public meeting of what is this, it's taken 6 months for us to really go through the thinking and the definitions to define the Luton Dart as a not national rail infrastructure. But it was really difficult because we've made the wrong decisions in a number of previous times. For example, the Gatwick Airport transfer is listed as national rail infrastructure, even though it's not. So we actually need to go and change that to be the same as the Dart, because it's a local metro. So this also leads to problems with Tottenham Court Road Station, which we can get to if you would like.
Yeah, sure.
So Tottenham Court Road Station now has a national rail platform, or 2 national rail platforms, Elizabeth Line. I'll call it the Elizabeth Line and not Crossrail or whatever else everyone calls it. Elizabeth Line, let's be formal. The Elizabeth Line is a national rail service, even though it runs through TfL territory and you do all the ticketing and everything within the centre, and it's within your station infrastructures. It is a national rail run station. It is in the same infra, because once you leave the environs of London, that line turns into a national rail station. So the stations at Taplow and Slough and Reading are definitely national rail stations. So should it change its designation of stations that it calls at as it comes through the centre of London, or should they remain national rail stations? Again, really interesting, I was going to say theological, philosophical question as to what is the Elizabeth Line. Because if the Elizabeth Line is national rail, you've then got a national rail platforms, 2 national rail platforms, and 4 metro platforms within Tottenham Court Road Station infrastructure itself. And how do we represent that in a way that is really clear, sets up the entrances correctly, which is one of the other pieces, as to all the different entrances, which entrance is closest to which platform. So when the when people are trying to plan their travel, the travel planning apps send people to the right entrance for the right platforms. And don't even get me started on then trying to put accessibility in. So, yeah. How are you thinking about Tottenham Court Road Station?
It's a good question. I think the Elizabeth line works quite similarly to London Overground in that, these are both sort of, in some respects, they're sort of National Rail services, but they're also not quite, as in, we don't use National Rail branding. These are sort of operate, we sort of operate that, or they're sort of operated under our license. And I do wonder about in the future, when sort of Great British Railways comes into being, and how that will sort of, if things will change with that. But I think a lot of the sort of systems, Darwin, you can go onto the National Rail website and you can see Tottenham Court Road Station there. And you can obviously use the National Rail Journey Planner to plan journeys there as well. And of course, Elizabeth Line and London Overground, they both serve National Rail stations, alongside other National Rail train operating companies. So, in a sense, you could think of it as a National Rail service that is just, operated by Elizabeth Line or London Overground. But it's a bit of an edge case, really. That they're not. Yeah.
It's one of those things of because I thought it was an edge case as well, and then I discovered it's less of an edge case than we thought, because there are similar pieces of this in Newcastle with the Newcastle Metro, and there are similar problems, and we need, if we get the concept or the way that we talk about it right, then it's going to be fine, because you also end up is it Moorgate or is it Moorgate or Farringdon? It's right by the where the Museum of London is going, right by Smith's Fields. There's a station which has the back end of Elizabeth Line platform. It's got a National Rail platform for Thameslink, and it's got underground platforms as well. Farringdon. It's Farringdon. And it's because it's the sneak. It's a way home for me from Tottenham Court Road Station that doesn't show on travel planners. It doesn't show on travel planners because there isn't that link currently between the Thameslink services and the Elizabeth Line services in their travel planning for whatever reasons. And I'm not suggesting it's anything nefarious. It's just we know that there are two very, very different systems at play there. So doing that, if you time it right, you actually end up coming off an Elizabeth Line train. I need step-free access, so I walk briskly to the lift, and the lift takes me up straight to the platform, and I can generally hop almost straight onto a train that comes to Elephant and Castle, which does not have step-free access, by the way. And yes, I have to climb 3 flights of stairs if I do this, but that's just something I plan in my day. But it's kind of one of those interesting loop ones that for some reason isn't showing up on travel planners, and some of that is because in the national stops, metro stations have platforms, but railways don't. We have the 2,300. I will actually show you this because I showed it on the other one, and this is rail stops audit. So I did an audit of every single rail stop in existence from both the NAPTAN record and the record from National Rail. And what we ended up with is there are 2,300 which are fine. There are 6 actually there's somewhere between 6 and 14 that need to be added to NAPTAN. There's a floating list because some of them, it's, do we add the ones that are coming in 2024 and indicate that they will be there in 2024 and have them as pending stops rather than active stops? There's a little question about when we put them in. There's 155 where we need to fix the name in NAPTAN because it doesn't match anymore. There's 80 where platforms are needed for the station because we have duplicate train stations rather than putting platforms in. So there are 3 Clapham junctions to represent, I don't know why there's 3 Clapham junctions, but there's literally 3 Clapham junctions in NAPTAN. And they're all active. So we're going to sort that out. So there's 1 Clapham junction which has platforms. Again, this is all being edited by me, so there's a lot. There's 76 that can be removed from NAPTAN. So there are, since the early 2000s to now, there have been 76 decommissioned stations, or stations that have changed purpose. Now, some of these stations are no longer train stations, they're metro stations. So we need to change their designation, ensure they're listed as metro station. Some of them, and currently they're in there twice. They're in there as a train station which can receive no trains because it's now a metro station. So we need to remove those stations. Some of them have been completely decommissioned. And then there's 89 that can be removed once the main station has platforms. So that's how many duplicates we've got within the system. Don't get me started on King's Cross St Pancras is in complete and utter insanity at the moment. That will be one of the last ones that I sort because it is so complicated with, 13 national rail platforms, including the A and B, plus all of the tube platforms, plus the Eurostar platforms to try to represent. And I'm just like, at some point in time, I will do that particular piece of coding. But this is, and so what I understood from looking through the data is this is the first time there's been an actual audit of the data. So I'm working with the rail team to check the audit to make sure that I haven't made any glaring mistakes or mistyped something or had something go a bit wrong. But effectively, we used the NAPTAN on one side and the National Rail on the other and just matched them all the way through and put gaps in where they were needed, and then we could find the removes and the name matches. But they all say rail station or railway station, and some of it is just making sure that they actually line up. Lancs should be Lancashire, or should Lancashire be changed in the National Rail system? So it's just tidying up all those little bits. And do we always need rail station? Is this a Battersea Power Station problem? So yes. Does that help
with
some?
with the central section of the Elizabeth line? Those stations don't have rail station in the name, so that's another.
Absolutely,
which helps us in that we don't like sort of showing rail stations to the public, but there is that inconsistency there.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I want to kind of tackle, which is kind of this bit around naming and stop names as to how we set up the rules around stop names so that they make sense locally and nationally, because Bond Street can be a bus stop because it's a bus stop called Bond Street, several stops on metro lines, and also now stops on the Elizabeth line, and we all know Bond Street. We can point to Bond Street. We can go Bond Street. Is that enough, or do we need to? Does it need to be Bond Street - London in some of the places? Is it the locality, or is it the locality Oxford Street? I don't know how you do the locality. Actually, bear with me here 2 seconds. I'm going to grab your data and we're going to interrogate a couple of questions, because I did this live for somebody else the other day. Download NAPTAN data, local authorities. You are 490 if I've got it right. Yes, I have, because I am amazing. Leon is just like, what are you doing? And it's like, I am using, I'm going to use Sheets just because it's slightly faster. And I'll show you the reason that it's slightly faster, because when I import my data, you get to see how crazy I am. And I've had 490 down a couple of times. Is it going to fit, comma? I can take this tick off to convert text to numbers, dates, and formula, which means that I don't end up with the problem of my leading zeros disappearing, but also my dates going a bit weird.
That's handy.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I consistently use Sheets for a lot of this quick jump analysis. And I also am aware that I've said to people, don't use... Where did that go? Is it taking a moment? Oh, yeah, here we go. I'll just put a filter across the top. Don't use the CSV file, and then I go and use the CSV file, but it is kind of one of those things. So if I just come back here, I want the common name to be Bond Street. Bond Street. Look, Bond Street Station, Bond Street Underground Station. I love that. Actually, I'll just select those. I love that they're all kind of you've got it in multiple different ways yourself. And I think this is part of clearing out the old stops. We can then sit down and look at some of these little inconsistencies. Are you actually filtering for me, Claire? If I put in Bond now, it will do it. And then select Bond Street Station. Yeah, that'll do. Okay. Now, where are your localities? Okay, so we've got Ealing, which is obviously the other Bond Street. Is the Bond Street in Ealing?
Apparently.
Apparently. And then everything else is, the locality name is Bond Street in London. Which is interesting. So this is, how do you do your localities? Because that's really fascinating to see. I'm just going to clear this and do elephant. Elephant and Castle, New Kent Road. Yeah, that'll do. What do you put? Elephant and Castle and then Newington. So you do Newington Causeway. You do Newington. That's interesting. But it's fascinating the way that you've done your localities. Because essentially, if your parent locality is London, then you're doing only one layer. You're not allowing that Elephant and Castle Southwark or South London or something like that kind of breakout. You're just going, there's Elephant and Castle and London. There's nothing, because you could almost have London as your grandparent locality and have another layer in the middle. But yeah, gazetteering, that's going to be a whole new extra thing. And then street we can probably get rid of. I think street isn't used by anybody. But see how your Naptan codes, your Naptan codes are supposed to start with a 1, I believe, but for some reason you've stopped doing that. So I now need to go through and have a look and find out where your Naptan codes are overlapping. But I'm also aware that changing a Naptan codes are ginormous data oops. So let's just find out where your Naptan codes overlap with other local authorities. So if somebody just goes by Naptan code, they could potentially end up in a wrong place. But yeah, also this is a station entrance. And I know that because it's got an RSC, railway station entrance. So that supposedly is the entrance to Elephant and Castle Station. Let's have a look. Where is its lat long? Do you have a lat? You haven't. You're not giving me lat long, only eastings, northings. For the first time, I'm going to not quite swear, because it makes it really, really hard to go and find this now in Google Maps. Let me. An ordnance survey. I don't have a license at the moment. Okay, I will put that under the too hard bucket for right now. But finding that, if we go to elephant, you can see I've done this a lot. So there's the Elephant and Castle. So here's one of the things that goes a bit wrong. So this is Google Maps. You've got Elephant and Castle underground station here, all fine. This is that whole bit where they're pulling down the old station. There is also an Elephant and Castle Bakerloo line that should be listed as an underground entrance or stop, but they've somehow just done it here. But what they haven't done is done that the entrance is on this side and the exit's on this side. So it makes it, but it, yeah. And also the Elephant and Castle train station, you might notice, has one platform, but your Elephant and Castle should actually be showing its underground platforms as well, so you can easily see the relative location between the two underground platforms. Because if you do that, you can then, if I make sure public transport's on, see how it's, if you put the platforms on, it makes it much clearer which entrance to go to as well. And I believe the entrance that it was talking about would be the one here, which now doesn't show up when I put public transport on. Oh, it does when I zoom in. Okay, I'll stop moaning about it. But it is just bonkers. And these are all your different. Now, here's one of the problems. These say bus stops, which is brilliant. If I come down to, is it this one here? Bus and coach station. It's not a coach station. That's the coach station, because you can see National Express stops at the one that's called a bus stop.
Right.
So this is one of the things that I'm like, I think it is particularly bonkers in London, and I don't quite know why. And I kind of, we need to do an offline meeting and sit down about this. But you can see the problem of the coach stop isn't the coach stop. The bus stop is the coach stop, but and it's not showing. And then when I click on these, I'm getting a stop ID. Oh, good, I am getting a stop ID. And if I use that should be the NAPTAN code within here. Let me just go and double check that is right. Select all, done. NAPTAN code, I want to clear, and I want to select just this one, just this number that I picked up. Just be patient, don't be so. Okay. Yeah, Elephant and Castle, New Kent Road. Stop M. And the problem is sitting here. So you scroll across. That one says BCT, and that one. So that one should be showing as a coach stop because it's got a BCT on it. If we go to this one, which is just a bit further up and is moving so many times because of all the construction. I love the fact that I can. Everyone's like, how do you know all of these crazy things? And I was like, because it's right in my manner. I notice it every time I walk out the house. This one is also listed as a BCT. And this is part of the problem, is coach stations can't be differentiated out because BCT covers both of them.
Right, so there isn't a separate Is there a separate stop type for coach?
There's a separate, well, this is where it becomes a bit, allow me to score myself null point and refer to the schema, which I will open up in the thing there in a moment. Just give me a second to find it, to find the schema. I have so many copies of it in my downloads folder. I don't want all the XMLs. I am going to have to do that a slightly different way. File, open recent. Do I have... Bear with me here. I am having to now try to find a copy of the schema where when you type in the word schema, you end up finding all of the XML that mention the word schema. Thank you, Google. Thank you. Actually, we'll do it this way. Let's just do it simple. Schemas and guidance. Let's download the datasets and schema guides. I want documentation. Yeah, we'll use this one. Let's go to find coach. Hopefully you can read this. I've gone through this enough times. I should be able to navigate it. Schema structure elements. Bus and coach. It always lists them the same. And it's something. It's one of those things of we might just want to sit down and go. And I think this is why there used to be a national coach reference, but that was only for national coaches, not local coaches. So I think we just need to sit down and go how we, and this is 2.5, so it's attempting to do accessibility, and we'll just ignore that because that's another question that I've got for you. Yeah, I think it's one of those things that I want us maybe to sit down and have a think, because it's causing a problem in London of not being able to easily identify coach stops. And how do we do it with the minimal changes to the schema so that what's in there currently is valid? We can change it to something else that also becomes valid and do very particular changes, because in London there must be less than 100 coach stops, actual coach stops, outside of Victoria Coach Station. I know that there's a couple coming in through Archway, there's a couple on the way to Gatwick, and there's a couple on the way to Dover through New Cross Gate, but they're not within Transport for London's area. There shouldn't be that many. So it's like, how would we code those up? Can we create a proposal, let your downstream operators know that this is a change that we're going to make, and then make it and ensure that the validators that we run also allow that value. And we've just done that small, tiniest change to the schema, and it's not so much a change. I think in Trans Exchange they're using the word profile for these types of small tweaks. Of we could just do the tiniest tweak to allow things like that to come through, because yeah, I spend a lot of my day prodding around the data, and it feels like I'm prodding around the data of like this tiny little area, but literally it's because I can go and physically double check what's there. So other things. So let's run back to here. So we've done national stops.
So
we've talked a little about names.
On that point, if you don't mind, one thing that that we're sort of wondering about is, we sort of talked about potentially we should have control over London Underground stations, for example. But we do have a need for actual national rail stations, for those to be updated or added. So Brent Cross West, for example, was quite an imminent one.
I know,
And
it's on my list.
so I just wonder whether, for those kinds of examples, whether and even Elizabeth line type stations where they might be sort of considered as national rail stations, how we might sort of what might be the best way to sort of handle those. Should it be entirely up to up to your team, or yourself to sort of add them, or should we potentially have a role in that? Can just as an idea to throw this out there, would it could we potentially sort of make or propose a change? So I don't know how complex the sort of, I mean, I guess it's just the NAPTAN XML. Could we potentially sort of create make the change within the XML and then sort of send that to you and for review?
So what I want to do, and this is kind of one of the pieces that's on my long to-do list, is look at how we devolve the responsibility and get essentially a permission, our standard permission-based controlled editor for these stops, so that if I give permission to you to do stuff within the M25, but also TfL's boundaries are porous, and we'll get on to boundaries in a moment. If I give you permissions to edit any of the centrally managed stops within that area, then I can just hand it over to you and trust you that, because you've got the information. This is the bit that I'm process-wise I'm trying to resolve. Is you have the information, you come to me to say I need this, I then need to figure out what of the information that you've got that I need to then go and create something that if I just gave you access, you could go do it. But I need to figure out how to give you access, because the model used currently doesn't allow that. So that's what I'm trying to figure out, but also trying to figure out, if I give you access, do I give you access to do ferries? Probably, because the river ferry piers. Do I give you access to do airports? Well, probably, because you've got City Airport and London, London helipads over in Battersea, and a couple of others around London. Just allow me to get, and that will make a whole pile of things much, much, much clearer and much easier. If I go to here and I go to here to what is in NAPTAN, and just jump into, so buses, we know what buses are. We know that we need to have a marked stop, some custom hail and ride flexible, which are unmarked, and a bus station. We need to have coach stops that are marked and coach stations. At the moment, within NAPTAN's coding, Victoria Bus Station is a bus coach station, and Victoria Coach Station is also a bus coach station. Now, we know that they're very different. They're at different ends of Victoria Station, but in NAPTAN, their codes are the same, and it's relying on the downstream operators to make smart distinctions based on other things than their coding to show what this is. And it's like, well, let's simplify it and just make the coding make sense. Then we've got tram stops, and which are on the street, within the street infrastructure stops, very much like the Croydon ones down in the Cronks. They're almost like a bus stop, but the tram pulls up to it. And then you've got your tram, light rail and metro stations, which are distinct from the street, aka DLR, aka London, your overground lines and your underground lines. And then you've got rail stations, which are, again, distinct, but on a different network and a network planning, network operators. You've got ferries. I've just put in ferry terminal because I don't know the difference between a pier and a quay. And I don't think anyone who's coded it up does either, because there are some places that have piers and no quays, some places that have quays and no piers. And I just want to understand it. taxi ranks, which you don't have, and let's just that's something we'll fit. Oh, but this is the one that I want to talk about. Is we've got a whole pile of different airports. So you've got a national international airport with terminals, London Heathrow. National and international flights with a single terminal, London City Airport, but it doesn't have helicopter services. An airport which offers only national flights, do not have multiple terminals. EJ London Airport in the Orkney Isles, which I just love the fact that I found somewhere that it was a London airport. Private jets only, which is London Farnborough, and then there's also your heliports, which is the London Heliport in Battersea, which is kind of one of those ones of, well, we at least need to indicate that it's there, whether or not anyone uses it as public transport, but it's still one of those ones of you can literally, it's like an airport. You can turn up. If you've got a valid ticket, you need to know how to get there on public transport to be able to continue your journey. And then we've got the telecabines, which is your cable car, the IFS Cloud in Greenwich, London, or Emirates Air or something else. It changed its name, and it's currently not a Naptan. You've got public lifts. So there's public lifts in Holborn Viaduct that I use, and then the funicular, I use the Welsh Cliff Railway that I cannot pronounce. And then the other thing that we want to, because you have started to use them, is the public hire bikes. What are they? They're now Santander cycles. The human forest bikes, which have changed their name again, which the public hire electric bikes, which London's trying to indicate bays to drop them off or places to drop them off geolocated, and the same with the electric scooters. Because just around from me, there's a Santander bike rack, and then there's 3 or 4 different blocked areas on the footpath, which are indicated for electric bikes and electric scooters to be parked, and they're kind of those geolocated areas that people are asked to leave their bikes or leave the things at. So it's quite how we indicate those is quite an interesting question. And then there's which I don't think I think the cycle rail bike racks is the ones that we have in London, because we've got them at London Bridge Station, and I don't know where else you've got them at the rail stations. They're part of the rail station infrastructure where it's a secure place to lock your bike. That is within the station infrastructure, and we kind of want to look at how we would include those. I think the public lockable bike racks, London be London, and it's just be, wow, good luck. Don't lock them to railings where it says don't lock them to railings, and otherwise it seems to be lock them to any piece of street furniture you find. Does this make a bit more sense of how we're seeing things inside Naptan as well?
Yeah, that makes sense. Actually, I was just looking at the cable car. So I think we do have, I think we at least have the entrances there.
Yes, but not the cable car. What is it called? Or you can give me the Naptan code or something like that to find them.
But sort of IFS Cloud. They start with IFS Cloud.
So it's in the common name. Okay, let me clear that. Yeah. IFS. So you've got the 2 entrances. So we've got the entrances now. What are they coded up as? TMU. What on earth is a TMU? Good Lord.
I think there's also in the 940 data set. I think that's where the actual.
It shouldn't be because it's it shouldn't be in a 940 data set. It's kind of one of those things of heavens only knows why we've done that. Is TMU a telecabine? No. What is a TMU? What is the TMU? It's going to be one of these Transmetro. Oh, you've done it as an underground. You've done your overground cable car as an underground station. I can potentially see the logic that happened in 20 whenever when this came out, but that shouldn't be an underground station with entrances. It should be a telecabine, or it is effectively a telecabine. So this is one of the things of when we've done the removal of dead stops from your data, this is all the little tweaks that we can do, and we can let your downstream providers know, hey, by the way, we've recoded this from, we're coding it as this, we're now going to code it as this, and we'll make the change on the state. Please update your software or your systems to reflect this. I can see why you've done it, because you'd never done a telecabine before. But it's not an underground station, and it's not a metro station. It's a telecabine, and it's a cable car, because that makes it code up correctly, so we know what it is. Yeah. Oh God, no wonder I couldn't find it, because I went looking for all the different telecabine versions of it. I will now go and update this here. Where was it? It was back up here. And it is a list in Naptan as an underground station, which is the most hilarious misclassification that I can think of. Yeah, I've left it or Emirates Air, because if people are looking on, I bet you in the 940 it's still Emirates Air. I don't know that. Have we updated that? Let's have a look. Let's go play Naptan bingo. Download Naptan data, local authorities, 940, national tram, the one I want, add CSV, download. Gosh, remember when those used to take minutes?
Well, they're actually right at the top of the file, of the CSV file.
Oh, excellent.
As
and you're going to... Oh, you're killing me. Oh, so again, other quick question for you. You know how I talked about doing the audit of the national rail stations? I need to figure out how to do an audit of the underground of everything in this 940, because, for example, we've got a whole part of Blackpool Tramway that doesn't exist anymore, which is some of the stuff we're taking out. Could I request from you a definitive list of every single tube, underground, tram station, etc., that you've got that would be a 940, or that you think should be a 940, all of them including their platforms, and then I can do this link up and see how much needs to be removed because the data set's got old data in it and things like that. For example, when I looked at the rail stops, there's a whole pile of what used to be on the overground, what used to be National Rail that's now part of the overground. So they are 910 stops that are now 940, and I've got to get rid of the 910 record, and I just want to make sure that we've got them all lined up. I'm not about to delete something that you're something like, oh my God, we've lost a station, Jay. What did you do to our data set? So if I can get a definitive list of every single what you consider to be underground, overground, wombling free type stops, including the tram, underground, London Overground, IFS, of course, and anything else. So I've got all those platforms as well. I can then go and double check and make sure that we've got in our data what you've got in your data, at least for London, and that gives me I can go, right, I've sorted out London, I've sorted out Blackpool, let's go through all of the other metros as well.
I think London Overground is in 910, but I think DLR is 940. Could be wrong.
London, a lot of London Overground is in 940. It should also be in 940. That is, and I found that when I was doing some of the clearing. But we'll find that out because
Sure.
I want to make sure that I've got all of the ones that you've got, and I don't have. I also love this whole TBA. What is TBA? Oh, that's landmark. Yeah, we don't landmark. Nobody uses landmark, so you can just leave it alone. Which was one of the most heartbreaking moments for a whole pile of people. Yeah, so I've got all of these. I know, for example, I know the Thames link at King's Cross. No, they moved some platforms at King's Cross and closed down and reconfigured it in about 2009. Because I've been in London since 2005, so I remember that. We still have those old platforms and those old pieces, which now when you travel through on the train says trains do not stop here, do not stand anywhere near this platform, this is a dead end part of the station. Those are still within our data set, so I need to go find those and remove them. So I know there's been some shuffling around and rebuilding of stations in various places as well. So even if it's only just removing a couple, it's finding them in this haystack of stuff and just making sure that I've got them all. And I bet you they've all got the same locality of London. Oh yeah, but some of them don't. Oh, and this was one of the other pieces that is sent to. I need to figure out how to split an ATCO code. It's not ever going to impact London, but there's one question that does impact London, which is the boundaries between local authorities. So, for example, in Denham, 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 not spelt as the gene, spelt that other way. In Denham, there are TfL buses that end there. So there are TfL bus stops because TfL buses only stop at TfL bus stops. And on the street, next door to the TfL bus stop, is a Buckinghamshire bus stop for the buses in Denham that run through Denham that are run by Buckinghamshire. So I need to figure out how we do boundaries where boundaries can be porous. Because TfL and I'm sure Transport for Greater Manchester and the conglomerate ones are the ones which will have those porous boundaries, especially the bigger local authorities. Like I know that you've got some stops that are on the way to Gatwick that are again also technically in another local authority's area. And how do we handle that in terms of localities, in terms of what they're listed under, in terms of stop areas, so that it's really clear for somebody trying to plan that they could catch a TfL bus to this stop and then walk a metre or so, or walk to the back of the bus and hop on the next bus at a slightly different bus stop. But they also need to change their ticket because they will no longer be on the TfL ticketing, they'll be on somebody else's ticketing. So how do we indicate that multimodal change where literally all you've done is hopped off one bus and hopped on another at what would feel like the same stop, because the two stops are right next to each other, and while one is distinctly branded TfL and the other is distinctly branded differently, they do look like just a very weird multi-design stop. I love that you're just sitting there going, how do you know this bonkers edge cases?
Yeah, I think that these are good points we need to consider.
Yeah, and I think we need to sit down and just do a little bit more. So one other thing that I'm playing with is potentially doing something around accessibility. I know that we want to do mapping. Yeah, everybody wants mapping. We can't do mapping at the moment because there are other considerations that we need to take into account in terms of licensing and what we can, and doing getting a mapping solution that maps to the detail that we need, that is also allowable to be viewable by the public and usable by all the public? Or do we just keep it restricted to people? What are all the licensing issues that we need to go through? That's a whole pile of questions that we need to sit down and sort out. So in the meantime, starting to look at some of the things around accessibility. And one of the things that, or one of the models that I was looking at, is most of London standard bus stop with the has a raised curb, generally has a bubble end edge, or is it only some that have the tactile tiles for the edges of the road and things like that, and for the crossing?
I think it varies quite a bit. So some, I think in a lot of cases, I'm trying to think. Do you mean sort of actual sort of large sort of tiles to indicate
Yeah,
the?
yeah. Do you know the ones I'm talking about? They're part of the foot pavings, and they're tactile. They're bobbled or they're ridged, which allows
Right.
anyone who's
Okay.
a cane user to identify, hey, this is the bus stop. They sometimes run in a line across the footpath and will direct the user to the bus stop. I notice them because I'm old and have bad feet, and so when I have to walk across them, they feel they're quite hard to walk across. So I notice where they are all the time, and they're at pedestrian crossings, or like at Elephant and Castle, they're at all the pedestrian crossings. They're also across the street to allow people to identify where the bus stop is. So you can walk along, and then you'll hit a ridge of a whole pile of uh, the the round tiles, and if you follow that towards the road, you'll then find a larger round square, which is generally where you would need to stand to catch the bus at that bus stop, if it's the first
I
bus
think
at the bus stop.
most bus stops wouldn't have any kind of tactile paving, but
Right.
potentially more likely in sort of bus stations or sort of busy areas potentially.
Yeah. Do you have that stuff on record within your data that you could then easily, yeah, you're like
So I don't know. I mean, it's not in the sort of data that I sort of tend to deal with, but it could be that, I mean, we have an asset management system. It could be in there. Um,
Yeah, because one of the things that I'm looking at is, how do we look at what is accessible, not just from a step-free access, which I think London's relatively good at. Most of the marked stops, not the hail and ride, but most of the marked stops have at least a raised curb that you can put a ramp on. Whether it's the right angles and all of that, that's always just a bit of a question. But the marked stops, but it's like, step free is not the only accessibility. What are the other accessibility needs? Like, you've got, most buses have the voiceover saying the next stop. Most of them have the displays saying the next stop, and the newer buses have slightly more readable displays than the old buses with the red matrix dots. Um, there's real-time information at most stops, or are you still rolling out the e-ink versions, which you've been trying to do around Elephant and Castle, and it's been amazing. I'm interested to see their longevity, given Elephant and Castle's reputation for trashing things.
so the sort of standard sort of information screen that we have is that sort of dot matrix display, and not all stops will have that. So currently they are funded by boroughs, and so not all boroughs would need to request those. Um, but we have been trialing other types of display, such as the e-ink displays. We've also sort of been trialing sort of LCD displays. But these are mostly sort of trials at the moment, and really our sort of standard offerings are still that sort of dot matrix display.
Okay. Oh, that's good to know, because I've seen around here, especially on the stop that has to keep moving because of the construction traffic, they've got one of the little e-ink displays on the pole. So it's quite interesting to watch people trying to interact with that or interacting with that, because it's currently providing a solution because the physical shelter's been taken away, so there's nowhere for the dot matrix to live. So this is a way of trialing and solving a problem at the same time. I like that kind of, okay, so we can't have a proper display at the stop for the next 3 years while they finish building whatever they're building there. So let's put an e-ink display on there and just move it whenever we have to move the post, we move the display. It seems to be the model.
Yeah, we've done quite a bit of user research on it, and actually one day I also went out with the team doing the research and sort of observing customers using it, and that's actually been quite positive, the feedback we've got from that. So yeah, it's potentially might see more of them.
Yeah.
won't commit to that, but it's
I'm just going to do I'm just going to do the proviso here. Whatever we're talking about, there is absolutely no commitment made on behalf of the Department for Transport or any of the local authorities in these discussions. I also want to ask you about how you use stop areas. Do you use them in London?
From a NatTown perspective, yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I think all of our stop points will be in a stop area. At least most of them will be.
Yeah. How do your travel planners use them?
That's a good question. I mean, so in terms of how our sort of website uses them, obviously there's a group stops. So if you have sort of two bus stops that are maybe on the opposite sides of the road in different directions, or if you're in a sort of bus station, then they'll all be grouped into a single stop area, and that way we can sort of list multiple. You can have a single web page where there's information about all the stop points are listed together, and sort of helps to group together, especially if you sort of think about and it also occurs with if you have underground stations and bus stops sort of just outside the station, then they'll often be grouped together in a single. So the actual the bus stop will often be part of the underground station's stop area.
So you must be using the station entrance to do that, not the 940 metro, not the 940 version of the station.
So I think we'll have
because I don't believe so the question that I'm asking, and I was trying not to ask it directly, but sod it, is I don't believe that anyone's systems allows them to group stops of different types. They can only group stops from different ATCO codes. So you can't have your 940 stop there. You can only have the 490 station entrance stop within your stop areas. And I just wanted to check that assumption, and you are now looking because I can see you frantically typing in the background there.
I'm just trying to see. So I mean, one thing that we do have is we have actually a separate construct, which is a sort of hub construct within our data, which sort of groups together multiple stop areas. And so in some cases, that's what happens, where essentially you have a hub and then multiple stop areas within that. I'm sure I've seen cases where there's maybe I'm misremembering. I'll need to.
Yeah, no,
I'm find some examples.
Yeah, if you can, and feel free to contact me afterwards. I'm gonna, because I think we should have a really good sit down on some of this stuff and just figure it out. Probably more as we bring you into the managed removal part, because then we can really sit down and start tackling questioning data and having a look at what should be where. But yeah, because one of the issues that came up in the other version of one of these was that the reason that that railway station entrances and metro station entrances had to be put in is simply because you couldn't do a stop area that grouped across multiple ATCO codes. And I'm like, well, if that was the problem, why did we put in station entrances? I'm sure there's other reasons for putting in station entrances, but it's kind of just trying to see if that is actually the problem, or whether it's just those particular people's software that doesn't allow them to do that.
I need to dig out some examples and have a little look.
That's fine. That's kind of one of those really detailed and interesting little pieces to play with. Is how can we I don't want to get rid of stop entrances, because I think they might have a purpose in some way, but it's really understanding their purpose, understanding exactly what they're there for. And that may very well become one of these next year. And in fact, I'll sit down and start planning it. I'm just going to do a thing here. So plan a meeting on stop entrances and how we use them. It'll be more really understanding what everybody thinks about stop entrances, but also how everybody wants to use them, because should they exist? Do you need to put them in? If you've got a station that's managed centrally, who manages the physical infrastructure of where the stop entrance is? Is it you or National Rail who determine what the new exit looks like, where the exits are or the entrances are to the Elephant Castle railway station, for example, because it's eventually going to be rebuilt and we'll have a lift. Please let them put a lift in. Step-free access everywhere. But it's how does that stop entrance that you need to have, who should be putting the data in? Are you having to go to National Rail to get the data to give to me to put in, or is the stop entrance, should it be managed by you? Is it one of those devolved things? Is it one of those things that we could, if we change who has responsibility for some of the national stops, how do we handle that better? Does that remove the need for a stop entrance, or will the stop entrance still be needed because of the issue with stop areas only being able to group stops across one ATCO code? I love the fact that these are the questions that we've got to sit down and ponder.
Yeah, that would be good to discuss.
So what else is there? Stop names. Really, really quickly asking around stop names. And Battersea Power Station and St James's is. Is there anything other than the Battersea Power Station moment? Now, here's a question. Did you decide not to have station because it would be confusing? Because it would make everyone laugh, including Jeff Marsh on his videos? Or is it because it would have flagged up in NAPTAN as well, as an invalid name because it repeats a word.
So in Naptown, it's called Battersea Power Station Underground Station. Are you sort of asking why we didn't have Battersea Power Station station?
So you're calling it Battersea Power Station
Yes.
Underground Station.
Yes.
But you've
so
still
the
got
convention is that basically that they all end with underground station. So
station. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, but it's also, I mean, that's a ridiculously long name. You also, so when you do so asking, I'm going to use Dunstan Road as an example, and everyone who's listened to this is like, would you stop obsessing over Dunstan Road? So Dunstan Road is the official meets the NAPTAN requirements name of Old Kent Road Tesco's, because it is on the corner of Old Kent Road and Dunstan Road is the defining road of it. And there's an entire thing of it shouldn't be named after a supermarket or a store or something, but Old Kent Road Tesco's is the name that's on all the buses, is the name that's read out. And I'm pretty sure it's the name in Naptan at the moment. So this leads to a question around the rules around naming, and how do you because at one point they were called Dunstan Road for a bit, and I think nobody knew where it was, or everyone was stopped the bus driver to ask, is this going to Old Kent Road Tesco's? Because Dunstan Road is a small road onto a light industrial estate that contains the Old Kent Road Tesco's. So how do you make those naming decisions?
Personally, I mean, I'm personally not involved in those kinds of decisions. So but I'm aware that we try not to include names of businesses within stop names, but there are exceptions.
I just need to run to my door. I can still hear you. Cheers, thank you. Right. That was just my postie. Oop. Crashing back into the desk. Yeah. No, it's so we don't tend to use it, but we do occasionally. Other quick question is, if there's a Dunstan Road elsewhere in the country, so one of the other things that people tend to do is this common name. It goes common name and then locality and then indicator. Is that also how you think of your stops, or are your stops more named? Do you use locality in what you do in your systems?
Not really. I mean, I think I'm just trying to I think if you sort of search on the website, and if there are multiple stops with the same name, then I think the locality sort of comes up to sort of disambiguate.
Is this TFL planner journey? Okay. From
can't actually find any examples at the moment.
Oh, oh my God! I did it by typing in Dunstan Road. I can now see why we don't use Dunstan Road. Betcha that.
So
that
yeah,
is.
I think. Are we talking about? Sorry, that there's Dunstan Road without an S. I don't know whether that's the one you meant, because I think.
Let me just do this, and then I can confirm that it's the right one. We found more than one locality. Wandsworth. No, none of those are actually Dunstan Road. Just let me make sure that I got the name right. Let me just close that and just zoom out slightly. run down Elephant and Castle. Want to run past there. Old Kent Road Mosque. No, it's a bit further. Where is it? It is just before Dunton Road, because I can't spell. Tesco's Superstore. It is this one here, which is not Albany Road. It will eventually tell me what it's called. Humphrey Street stop. Dunton Road. So, is this one also called Dunton Road? Yeah, okay. Here is a fun fact. The 172 and the 168, the 172 that definitely goes past there, and the 453 announce the stop not as Dunton Road, but as Old Kent Road Tesco's. I'm 99.9% sure last time I went down there that they did that, because it was one of those things that I was looking out for.
I think one thing that's a bit confusing is that essentially the name that's on the destination blind isn't necessarily the name of the last bus stop. So often you'll have let's say the 415, it will also say 415 to Old Kent Road Tesco, the actual name of the final stop. I think, I mean, I can check the actual system. I think it says Dunton Road. Because I haven't actually been, but
yeah, because when I last did the journey, I thought, and again, listening to podcasts, so I could have been missing it. I thought it said Old Kent Road Tesco's. Oh yes, of course, because the bus stop to Penge might not be the name of the last. But I used to catch the 176 to Penge a lot, so I heard this is 176 to Penge, with that wonderful electronic pause every time, for a maddening amount of time. I was 99% sure that it said, it said it that way. Can I see map view? Oh, that's even weirder. So it is Dunton Road. Is that stop, not that oh, that's fun. Because here's a fun thing on your planner. I'm just gonna laugh at your planner. If I'd walked across the road, if I'd walked down and across the road into here, I catch a direct bus that takes me in less time than this to Elephant and Castle. But your planner is sending me to take a 78 bus all the way around and then catch a 1 to do the last bit. And I'm just like, that is really back to front, because all you need to do is walk in the other direction. So obviously you've got you must walk north rather than walk south, bias on your algorithm or something.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I mean, it could be that. I might need to look into this.
I love the fact that even the simplest moments can become completely complicated the moment I get involved in them. Because I know that this A2 corridor is just bust beyond bust. If you wait, especially at these stops, to go in the direction of Elephant and Castle for more than 5 minutes, you're either very late at night or the traffic be complete pants, and you can recognize that. Like, these are the ones where you don't even need a next bus sign, because the next bus is literally, the buses are just constant along this A2 corridor into the whatever it is. So that's Old Kent Road into New Kent Road, because I don't know my A numbers, but that's that one of Yeah, you're it's I love the fact that it's taking a very disused or a very underused bus stop and ignoring the stream of buses going behind you. And I'm just wondering if this one also, so what does this one do? Map view does the same, and what does this one do? Does the same. Weird. That is very weird. Because
Well, I
I would.
think it will try to prioritize using the stop that I think in this case I don't know if you
I'll
selected
put
a
in a
particular
stop. Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So if I put in Old Kent Road Tesco's. We'll try Tesco Pharmacy. We'll see how that does. This is fun. Oh, it does. This one does send you. Yeah. So this one does send you slightly, but your starting point is slightly different. And it's taking you around Humphrey Street. So you're doing a very. What are you doing? Humphrey Street, Old Kent Road, onto Dunton Road. But you aren't. What on earth are you doing walking? The walking is weird.
that is strange.
Yeah. Sorry to do this to you. I really feel
No,
embarrassed. I'm like, because I know that it's kind of it's one of those ones of walk to the traffic lights, cross the traffic lights, walk along the road. It's the it it's one of the simplest interchanges, and it's got you walking to somewhere that's not where the stop is, but at least it's picked up the right stop and the right bus, so that you've got your quick 7-minute trip, not your 18-minute journey. And that's doing the same, and that's doing the same. Yeah. So the walking to Dunton Road is weird, and this is where I think there's weirdness around where some of the stops are located. Um, yeah,
we,
because
we are
also
testing. We are testing a new version of the journey planner which has sort of better, was supposed to have better sort of walking routing. So I'll need to test this journey with the new version.
you're like, oh no, please don't show us up or live on the stream, live on whatever this is when this is recorded and eventually put up, with me running to the door and everything still within it. So yeah, we've got about 20 minutes left. What else should we tackle? Should we tackle something else and just have another completely bonkers moments of the two of us looking at some data going, why is it doing that? Because so oh, sorry, I was just going to ask you. So here's a question. I Because I live by Elephant Castle rail station, I use the Thames Link a lot to get up to King's Cross, rather than simply because it comes out in St Pancras station, and I can pop up. I need relatively step-free access, so I pop up the two escalators, and I'm at the concourse quite quickly, and then can get out to either King's Cross station or St Pancras quite easily, which is an easier walking route than catching the Northern Line up to King's Cross. Even though the Northern Line's slightly more step-free at this end, it's much more walking at the other end to get to the same physical spot. But the TfL journey planners very, very rarely show me that the Thameslink line. Is that because Thameslink is not part of the TfL network, so you don't include it in your planning, your planner?
Thameslink should be in there, but I don't know whether it's because of, I don't know
It
how
could be
frequent the
timing.
service is, or
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could be a timing thing of like if I don't try and plan the journey when a train is due, then it says you're going to wait too long for a train type thing. Because this is like the Elizabeth line to Moorgate and then Thameslink down to Elephant and Castle is kind of one of those weird ones as well. Yeah, it's just and I bet you it'll all be on the time taken. It will be completely on the time taken, won't it? And because you prioritize by fastest journey.
Yeah, that's the default. We do also have sort of least walking and also fewest changes as options, but the default is the sort of fastest.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and even if it's 1 minute's difference, we
yeah,
will prioritize that shorter journey.
yeah, and I think it's funny because sometimes it's like, look, I know this is a slightly easier journey, in terms of just fighting your way through crowds and people and stuff like that and interchanges. Oh, interesting. Okay, weird question for you. There are some, because I'm a cripple, so I notice this stuff. Um, I self-identify as a cripple, so I use that word to self-identify. Um, I'm really focused on step-free interchanges. So, for example, at some stations, there's no step-free access to the street, but there's step-free interchanges between particular tube lines if I am doing a particular journey, because the tube lines are at the same depth. And you can hop off one train, walk across a couple of a walkway, and then hop on another tube, and you don't have to fight any steps whatsoever. And they're like my dream interchanges. Um, but you can't see those in any of the planning systems, though, because they're a step-free interchange where there's no step-free access. And I'm thinking of like what is it, Bakerloo line to Victoria line, heading in roughly the same direction at Oxford Circus. No, Oxford Circus doesn't have Victoria line. Where am I doing that interchange? Was it Victoria line? Might have been Piccadilly. There's a couple of weird interchanges that are flat, and I'm like, how do we represent the relative depths and steps to get to and from particular um, particular platforms where the station is not in itself got step-free access to the outside.
Right. So that's a good question. I mean, I would have thought that our journey planner should be able to account for those, because essentially we have the stations modeled, and the interchanges are modeled, and each interchange, so the actual the interchanges between parts of stations, and then essentially we have attributes to say this is a step free, this can be step free, or this is these are stairs you need to go up. And so
Mm-hmm.
if you're planning a journey and you sort of say you need step free access, then it will exclude sort of means of getting between parts of stations that are stairs or
Ah,
escalators.
so
um
you're able to do it down to that defined because yeah, I and this could be part of our accessibility discussion. I think it's really interesting to look at there's full step free for somebody who's in like a powered wheelchair or something like that. And then there's minimal steps or escalators preferred or something like that, which allows as somebody who walks with a stick or who has a baby in a pram or something like that. And then it's almost indicating, hey, you can get through the station. There's no lift, but there's escalators. Or at the station, you're gonna be faced with that because every single station always seems to end with 3 flights of stairs. So Piccadilly Circus, I hate beyond hating, because I come in on the Bakerloo line, I can catch escalators up to a certain point, but then to get out of the ticket hall, there's 2 to 3 flights of stairs at every single exit. There's no step-free exit. So you can get to the ticket hall, but you can't get any further without help or without going up a flight of stairs. And that's a really fascinating kind of, okay, well, how do you indicate that? Because it is vaguely step-free, and how do we indicate some of those pieces so that somebody has the agency and autonomy to make decisions about where they hop off on their journeys and the journeys that they take? Because to me, it's about having the information about what the infrastructure is, rather than telling me, oh, you can only do this journey. Because sometimes you've got to go to Piccadilly Circus. It's where our office is. So I do it in the weirdest way possible. I catch a bus to Trafalgar Square and walk up from Trafalgar Square, because it's the fastest common point for the 3 buses that go to there, and the walk up the slight slope is actually relatively flat up to the office from Trafalgar Square, and I get some of my steps in. But it's kind of one of those, but and it was funny, I was discussing this with some of my colleagues when they were pregnant, and they were coming in on a train to Waterloo, and previously they had then gone on the Bakerloo and hopped out at Piccadilly Circus. And as they got more and more heavily pregnant, they found that a harder and harder journey to do. And I said, catch a bus. And we were discussing with a couple of them, and and a couple of weeks later, they're like, oh my God, the bus thing was just the best thing that I ever did. Because it might take me only 2 minutes longer, but I'm so much less tired when I make it to the office, because I've not had to fight my way up and down the stairs. And it's like, yeah, that's how do you make some of that knowledge so that somebody has that autonomy to make those decisions visible to people? Is a fascinating question.
Yes, good point. I mean, at least on our sort of website Journey Planner, I mean, it's sort of hidden away, but you've got like a sort of view details button, and you've got a sort of pop out panel for accessibility details. It's not the greatest of information, as in, but it sort of gives a summary of, so if there were stairs or sort of escalators, then those would all be listed there.
Let me just try. I'm not testing you. I'm just gonna test one. I'm going to go from Elephant and Castle Station to Wardour Street. I won't put in my actual postcode because I know this is being Wardour Street, and we'll go to the Santin. We'll go to that update journey. View details. Accessibility details. Nice.
And they're sort of listed in the above section as well. You've got those sort of icons.
Yes. Up. I like the way it's just like up. Elephant and Castle, downstairs. It doesn't say that it's got a lift, because the stairs are from the lift down to the platform. So there's only yeah.
So really, but it sort of shows you. I mean, it's sort of routing you to use the stairs, but I suppose it might be useful to sort of show that there is a lift available. So the kinds of things
that's what I was trying to say, because it's one of those ones of, if you've got it, you've got 2 sets of stairs. They're actually quite short. You've only got 1 set of stairs. Do you? Is it sending me? It's sending me Bakerloo. Bakerloo only has 1 set of stairs. I love the fact that I know my railway station. I know my local station that well. There's 1 set of stairs, not 2, down at Elephant and Castle, and there's also a lift. So it is one of those ones. Yeah, we might need to have it. Poor Leon's like, oh my god, stop being such a geek on transport. But that, oh, but that's really good because it does give you that. So I wonder, where did I go? It was Tottenham. Let me just see if it did this. I think it was Tottenham Hale. Yes, that's the one, because it's got the train to Luton on it. Have I chosen the right one? Tottenham Hale. View details. Accessibility details. One level walkway. It's this interchange here that's flat between the Bakerloo and the Victoria line at Oxford Circus. But I don't, yeah.
So I think if there were sort of, I think that's maybe why there isn't any sort of icons there. So I think if there were stairs, then I think we would show them.
What's a DLR? Give me a DLR station. So I need to go. It should route me from Elephant and Castle to Canary Wharf and then onto the Dilla, and that definitely has some steps. Does it? Where am I? Where would I get steps in? I want to transfer it bank. So what would I do to transfer it bank? A central line station going towards Essex. So I want a central line station towards Essex is, oh God, I tried to play that Uxbridge. No, that's the wrong way. Uxbridge is in the wrong direction. Central line station towards Essex. That's all that I need. Bethnal Green, perfect. It should transfer me. Just use that. It should transfer me at Bank. Yes. Access, lift, and escalators. View details, accessibility details. Because this interchange is not flat. So it's not got, sorry. So it's got the getting in and out of the station access, but not the access within the station.
Okay.
Because I know, yeah, sorry. I feel like I'm being like, oh, really picky, but I'm like, no, because this to me is really fascinating, because this being able to surface this detail really will help people plan, because I know getting from the Northern Line to the Central Line is not as much fun as you would think in Bank, because it's quite, and if you hop off the wrong end of the platform, you can be sent there's always two routes around Bank, because Bank is a maze, and if you get sent the long way, it's quite a lot of stairs. So that's really fascinating as to how do you represent the within station interchanges, because these are really good, telling me how to get in and out the stations. But how do we represent within those interchanges how to do them, where because you're not crossing the ticket lines or is it the ticket gates or anything like that?
Oh, no, I think I saw that it said, two lifts up, further down, two escalators up. So maybe one of those escalators is that interchange at Bank, perhaps.
Yeah.
It's just not showing up as an icon.
Yeah. Because that's that thing that colours. It's that information that you end up knowing. It's the you know you're a real Londoner when you know which end of the train or which carriage to hop on and things like that. And I remember there are other providers, but also I know that City Mapper used to always tell me before it got too full of advertising, always used to tell me which end of the train to hop on, so that I hopped off closest to the escalators at various things, because you start to learn that all the time. I need to go because I've got another meeting that I need to be at 12. This has been fascinating and amazing. I hope it's been useful.
Yeah, it has. Thanks for running these sessions.
Absolutely. I'm going to stop recording because I will put this up. If you